With the release of the Continental, we now have 5 John Wick universe things, so it is time to now stop and rank all 4 John Wick movies and the spin-off The Continental from the least best to the best. In last place at number 5, The Continental from the world of John Wick. And this one had a lot of potential, and in some ways it succeeded, but in some ways it also kind of diminished. It was a really good show, but I am going to say episode 1, while still being a good episode, was my least favorite. I think that episode 1 was a bit slow for me. It had some action, but still, I felt it was a bit boring at times and confusing. I think episode 2 fleshes out some of the characters more, so I enjoyed it more than episode 1. And episode 3 was pretty awesome, with awesome action, great. I love the way that they used the villain in the part of the scene in episode 2 and in episode 3. Like, Mel Gibson is one of the reasons that this is such a good show, because he is awesome. He is such a great actor, especially the way he portrays the villain in this. Like, he is intimidating. Like, there's a scene in episode 2 that you will know what I'm talking about, and he does something super unexpected and horrifically violent that if you just watch him, like, you can tell that he is angry because of just the expression that he is making, and because he is such a great actor, he emotes so well, and you can tell he is angry, and you are like, oh no, this guy's getting angry. So he is great. I think the actor who plays Winston, he is also great in this, so I really enjoy him in this. I think it's mostly episode 1 and 2 that bring it down, because I think that it's also being stacked up against films that have had more time to flesh out their world. Meanwhile, this is doing it in 3 episodes that are only an hour long, so it was harder to do that. So I'm being a bit nicer to it, considering that I think that it has potential to go for a second season, and I would be fully interested if they did decide to do that. And overall, this was a really enjoyable watch, but if I'm going against the other John Wick movies, this is definitely in last place. In fourth place, now the next several are interchangeable. This is just my opinion, and this is now where we separate the boys from the men, because at number 4 I am putting John Wick Chapter 3 Parabellum. Great movie. I think that there's a big leap in quality from The Continental to John Wick Chapter 3 Parabellum, and I really enjoyed The Continental. So getting this have a big leap in quality is quite a compliment. The Continental's around a 3.5 star. This is now at a 4.5 star. So this is a great film. If we were evaluating these by the best moments in the franchise, in terms of best moments that have the best action and cinematography, this would be number 1 by a landslide. Chapter 4 and Chapter 2 have the most moments that could be replayed, I think. Actually, Chapter 1, it debatably has more moments than Chapter 4. It's only because Chapter 4 is newer, so it's harder for that to get beaten by a film that's it's nearly 10 years old. So I think that this is a great film with great action. It's one of the most divisive in the entire franchise. There are people who say it is the worst in the franchise but still enjoy it, and there's people who say it's one of the greatest action films of all time and say it's the best in the franchise. I think that the story here is a bit off. I think that I don't really enjoy the fact that they do wander a bit. The way that John Wick has to start walking in the desert, and he finds a guy as soon as he passes out. That's part of the story's always been a bit clunky for me. I think Halle Berry is a great addition to the cast, and they do justice to dogs, which is always nice. And I absolutely love the third act. The third act is debatably the best third act. It's between this and Chapter 4. Chapter 4 does a lot of really good things with Chapter 3. Chapter 3 and Chapter 4 have a lot of times where they compete for something. For cinematography, they compete heavily. When it comes to the hand-to-hand combat, it also really depends. It might be Chapter 3 when it comes to hand-to-hand combat. If we were evaluating these also based on third acts, that's a really tough decision, because it could be Chapter 3, it might be Chapter 3, but I absolutely love this. The action's great, but I think the plot is a bit clunky at points and a few plot holes that make a bit that are a bit straining. But other than that, this is a fantastic action movie. At number three is John Wick Chapter 2. And I'm gonna say up in front, Chapter 3 and Chapter 2 are interchangeable. This is a 5-star film for me. I love it. Chapter 3 is borderline 5 stars. It is that good. So I absolutely love this movie. I think that the villain in here is not the greatest. He is debatably the worst in the entire franchise. He's not intimidating at all because of the fact that he has money to send assassins, but other than that, anybody could kill. Like a lot of people could kill this guy. John, the only reason he didn't kill him is because because that guy has guards around him all the time, and I feel like at points he comes off like he's a bit annoying at times. So it's not. It's like his motivations are a bit clunky in that, and but this action and cinematography is way up. There was almost the budget was like almost 2 times as big as it was in the first one, so that was always nice. So it's bigger. It goes for a lot more. The action in here is spectacular. You get awesome action scenes, and like that scene at the concert is awesome. Like you want to see a great action, watch that scene. That is where you just see John with his awesome a gun just doing all sorts of things. And I like how this is really accurate to like how you actually use a gun. Like not how like if you watch things like Rambo First Blood Part 2 and 3 and just a lot of the Rambo movies, you can tell that like in the 80s, like when they would shoot guns, they wouldn't be looking in the target. They would just like be shooting it with their hands and not looking at all like trying to look cool. This is a lot more accurate because they're doing things like actually he's like you notice that John's always like using his aim. He always has it up to his eyes, which is always a lot more accurate. So this is an awesome film. The action's awesome. The third act of this film is awesome. One, I will say, while I have not mentioned one yet, has easily the worst third act by far. We will get to that when we talk about one, but I think that this one is bigger and it goes for a lot more. And I think John starts to strain a bit more of the credibility than he should. Chapter 3 takes it to a whole nother level. That's something I forgot to mention. Chapter 3, another reason why I was in last place is that John Wick takes a ton of damage. There's a scene in that movie where he gets shot in his bulletproof thing, so he has to jump off of a building. He hits his back on a like big board. He then hits his back again on a big pole, then falls down the entire building, which I can tell you, if the first thing didn't kill him, then the second thing would. If the second thing didn't kill him, which it should have, the third thing would have. And if that didn't kill him, I don't know what will, because that was a ton of damage. But this is a great movie, and I do have a ton of fun with this movie. Our runner-up is John Wick. The original from 2014 is my second favorite, and until I saw Chapter 4, which was not long after because I watched the original. A couple months after that, I did Chapter 2 and Chapter 3 on the same day. I then started Chapter 4 the same day. So Chapter 1 was my favorite after watching 2 and 3 because I think that the original is just more grounded and it's a lot more real and it's the most simple, so it's more simplistic, which I always enjoy. And I think that 4 I watched and almost immediately became my favorite, but we'll get to that one. But anyway, this is a great film that is a lot more grounded than any of the others. The sequels get a lot bigger, and that's a lot of their strengths. But a lot of people forget that this one is not like the big blockbuster. It was not as marketed well. It was they released the trailer a few like weeks before the movie even came out, so like it had all the right to not be good, and yet they delivered. It was still a fantastic action movie and one of my favorite action movies of all time. So I absolutely love this. It sparked my favorite movie franchise of all time. Keanu Reeves is so amazing in this role, and I think that he has 2 great franchises. Well, no, 1 great franchise. I hear The Matrix is, as a franchise, not a good one at all. But he has a fantastic franchise in John Wick. He also has a famous one in The Matrix, and he also has another also has another famous like trilogy to franchise called Bill and Ted, which I don't know if you've heard of, but you probably should have. And this is a great movie. It's a lot more grounded and it's a lot more violent than you would think. This competes with Chapter 4 for the least violent. It's chapter 4 might be the least violent now that I think about it. Chapter 3 and chapter 2 are definitely the most violent by a landslide. And I think that this movie really does a good job of getting emotions in you, like making you absolutely hate the villains after they murder John Wick's dog, which means that you can actually watch these villains kill. You can watch John Wick kill these villains and be like, yeah, kill them, and do it in the most painful, brutal, messy, and destructive way possible. And believe me, they do. He does. And I think it strains a bit more credibility. Like as soon as we get to the final fight, where like a big overweight man manages to, actually manage to defend himself against John Wick, where John would have destroyed him in a minute, tops. So I think it strains a bit more credibility there, and I think the third act starts to slow down a bit. But I think it's a one that I have a lot of fun with, and I think Keanu Reeves just owns this role. This is a movie that chapter 4 wraps it up in a way in which he probably will not be coming back because they close his character off pretty nicely, and something that I will talk about when we get to chapter 4. So if you haven't seen chapter 4, what are you still doing here? You should have seen that. It was amazing. But anyway, I absolutely love this movie. It's the most grounded of all of them, the most simplistic, but that's one of the charms of them. So this is number 2. But in first place is the legendary John Wick Chapter 4. The great, great action movie. I loved this movie. This is in my top 15 favorite movies of all time now. I thought this film was awesome. The action's great. The cinematography is fantastic. And I think that this does some of the great things that sometimes some of the others kind of striked out. Like the third act, like for John Wick, the original partially struggled with the third act. And I think that they fixed that with the third act is awesome. And this is fantastic, and it's it's mostly believable. Like John Wick having to fall down that many flights of stairs and then getting back up, then killing that many people to get back up is like, dude, okay, tone it down a bit. You're straining a bit more credibility than you should be. But I get it. But sometimes you have to risk credibility to get an awesome movie or an awesome scene. Hello, Commando. But anyway, this is just awesome stuff. You get all sorts of great action, and I think that there's so many great things about this movie. Like, the villain is debatably my favorite. He might be my favorite. I think Mel Gibson's the best villain, but I think that he's the most intimidating in terms of what he does. I think they butcher his death a bit in the end when he died. I think the John Wick when the way they kill the John Wick villains usually fumbles a bit. It's usually always fumbled somehow. I think that they either come out of nowhere or they kind of don't build it as well. And I think that this does great things. Like it does the best world building, in which it builds the world out the most, and it gives you a lot more backstory on a lot of these characters. And this is one of those movies where, unlike things like Across the Spider-Verse, which did not need a runtime like that, sorry guys, I have to insult that film every chance it gets. You want to overrate this film? Then I'm going to have to insult it. Just saying. But unlike films like Across the Spider-Verse that are getting longer, like that's 2.5 hours, this film is 2 hours and 49 minutes, and it earns every second of that runtime. It does not slow down for 1 second. The action is great. You do not get to see one moment that's not have some thrills or tension or something. It's always given some great Mr. Nobody. No, not Mr. Nobody. That's a different movie. But I'm trying to think. Donnie Yen's character, the blind guy, he is awesome in this. He might be my favorite side character. It's between him and Winston, I think, or the dog, or the hotel, the guy that was young in the Continental. There's too many great side characters. This is just getting mean for me. Why do so many of these characters have to be fantastic? Why can't we get one that sucks? But anyway, this is a fantastic movie. I love the action, and I think that the way they end the film really gives a closure to John Wick's character, where he's finally happy after he... Just so you know, I'm going over a spoiler. If you have not seen the film, what are you still doing here? You should have seen this film... can't say years ago. It just came out. You should have seen this film in theaters like I didn't. I really wish I could have seen this in theaters, but I had only seen the original when it came out. I'm gonna try and get Chapter 5 in theaters or Ballerina in theaters when they come out. But this is a great movie, so I think they give closure to John Wick's character because at the end of the film he does die. There's a like after he finally kills that guy, it feels like it's like he's finally going home now, but he has been shot several times, so he like succumbs to his wounds. So I think it's a great closure to his character, and I absolutely love the way that they pay tribute to him, and I think it is a fantastic conclusion that you guys should love. There you have it, everyone. There's my ranking of all 5 John Wick movies and shows, ranked from the least best to the best. In last place, in number 5, is The Continental from the world of John Wick. In fourth place is John Wick Chapter 3 Parabellum. In third place is John Wick Chapter 2. At number 2 is the original John Wick. And at number 1 is John Wick Chapter 4, the legendary action film. And I want to be perfectly clear, the only ones that are like pretty much completely stayed put are 5. 1, 2, 3, and 4 are interchangeable. Usually 4 is the one I would land on, but I'm going to say Chapter 3 keeps trying its hardest to make a comeback, and I am still rewatching it. I'd only watched 1 and 2 before making this video, and The Continental. Just saying, for the Genre Challengers big ranking, which is an announcement, this if it keeps this up, it's probably going to top Chapter 2. Just saying, I'm debating it, but I have no idea yet. But just a special announcement: the Genre Challengers are having another big ranking that will be coming on either February 30th or January 30th. I'm still debating on that. Film Kid and I have been talked about the time at some points, but it depends on if I can get the Daniel Craig James Bond movies done by January 30th. If I can, then we will release it on the 30th. If I have not, we will delay it to February 30th. Just so you know, we will have a special guest on our next one, so stay tuned for that. Make sure to mark your calendars, subscribe to all of them, and because you should love it. And I will post the link. I will put the link to all of the Genre Challengers down below if I can remember, as well as the fact all of the Genre Challengers have seen all the John Wick movies, and including the Continental, so I will try and put links to their rankings in the comments below. Thank you all so much for watching, and have a good one.